Hey, ladies. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe that we are at day 25 of our 30-day spiritual growth challenge. Mm. Well, today I'd like to talk to you about something that's incredibly meaningful. The topic today is becoming a woman of purpose. This journey of finding purpose has been life-changing for me. And as I truly discovered what I have been called to do in this life, especially as it pertained to my God-given purpose, was truly phenomenal. And I want to share some of that with you, especially for those who are still wondering what their purpose is. So let's think back to when you were a kid. Remember how fearless you were? How you just take risks, you'd go for whatever, you would just say anything that comes to your mind, you would try new things, you would dream big, you would just be free. Remember those days? I know I remember just running around, being creative, believing that I can do anything. I had no filter, I had no fear, I had no doubts. It was just pure joy and curiosity. But then we start to transition. We start to transition from being a kid, childhood to adulthood. And then you start to see that things are changing. And now we're being told to be more realistic, or at your age, you now have to try to fit in. And what happens? You start to worry more. You start to dream less. Your dreams start to be tucked in. For me, I started to second guess everything that I did and said. I started to worry about what others thought about me or what I did. Does that sound familiar? This often reminds me of that scripture from 1 Corinthians 13 and 11 that says, "When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man," or a woman in this case, "I put away childish things." Yeah. In this scripture, Paul is talking about growing up spiritually and emotionally. But let's not mistake it for removing your freedom. It's not about being fearful or doubting what God has given you. It's about moving past the fears and your doubts that's holding us back. And it's allowing us to step into what God has truly created us to be. So, finding your purpose, it's not about fitting into a mold, especially society's mold. It's about discovering what makes your heart sing. It's about what brings you the most joy. And trust me, God has put those desires in you already. Think about the scripture, Jeremiah 29 and 11, that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future." This verse reassures us that God truly has a plan, and his plans for us are good. They're filled with hope, and they're filled with promise. Our purpose was instilled in us before we were born. And as we get to discover our unique gifts and talents, you also start to discover your purpose. But often those distractions and societal pressures and expectations of us as women, especially, as we are going into our careers, we are wives, we're girlfriends, we're mothers, it's causing us to stray away from the path that was set for us from the very beginning. And we start to live life. But we still have those innate gifts that are within us. The things that we love doing. That's the clue right there, that's part of your God-given purpose. So just to give you a little bit of what I went through in trying to find my purpose, I remember that time when I would say I was in around college years, when I felt so lost. I just felt like I was wandering aimlessly through life, like a leaf blowing in the wind. And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I was like, I feel so lost. I don't even know why I'm here on earth. Like, why am I here? And my friend said, well, if you don't know, why don't you just ask God? Which was so foreign to me. I'm like, why would I ask him? I don't even know. I didn't really know much about God and if he would talk back to me. But hey, I was willing to try. And I did. And what I found is God was responding to me. He was calling me. He was calling my name. And I actually thought it was my mother calling me throughout the night. But it was God. You know, day after day, he would just say, Kimberly. And I'm like waking up like, who's calling me? But I realized it was about my gift. He was responding to me. And he said, I've called you to teach and I've called you to write. And I'm like, no way. That's really stepping out of my comfort zone. But when I started doing it, it just felt so natural for me to teach. And teaching became my passion. And that's something that everyone just saw in me. And it wasn't that it was a burden for me. It was pure joy. I enjoyed it. I was truly walking into my purpose. And that was the same for writing. As uncomfortable as writing was, when I started to write, it just flowed. And that's where the book, Invisible but Powerful, the devotional book for women, came to be. So you have to think about what God has stored up in you. And I encourage you to spend some time in prayer and ask God what your purpose is. And when you ask, also listen. Listen to that still small voice and realize it's going to be tied into your passions and your talent. And that's wherever you will find the most joy and fulfillment. Remember, God's purpose for you is not supposed to be a burden. It's supposed to be pure joy. So whether it's singing, whether it's writing, whether it's teaching, that is part of your purpose. But you have to confirm that with God yourself. Don't let fear hold you back. Embrace the woman that you were meant to be. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and for those who have been doing the spiritual day journey, thank you. Let's continue to walk this path together, and we would continue to become the woman of purpose that we've been called to be. Always remember to continue to be blessed and a blessing.